There he is.
Hey.
Welcome back to the show. Joining us live from Ukraine is our dear friend Philip Ittner, 1L, 2Ts, at Philip Ittner on Twitter. If you want to follow him, he's been vlogging from Ukraine and posting stories from there. He's been our eyes on the ground. He's given us someone to care about and worry about directly on the ground there, but instead of just the abstract caring for people who are there. We got somebody to clamor about. And I will say that he did indeed live up to his promise to get his beard tightened. And yep, he had it pulled in. It's looking fabulous for those of you that are joining us on the live stream. And of course, Johnny Million is here. And he will be going through questions put forward by our chat room, either at Twitch, twitch.tv/HalSparks, or on infotainmentwars.com, which will take you to the YouTube page. Now, first of all, catch us up, Philip. A lot of times, we start into the discussion about what's going on in Ukraine, but I always want to make sure that we check in on you as a human right now and where you are and what you're doing.
Well, I'm back in Kiev. I've got an apartment here, and then I keep an apartment out in Lviv, at least for the time being. And so I'm back from Odessa. I'm in Kiev, and it's it's summer is here. It is relatively hot, not as hot as it is for folks out on the front lines, but it's we're getting in the 90s Fahrenheit. So it's summer in Kiev. It's lovely, but we're still we're under the constant threat of air attacks.
Right.
I got out of Odessa just in time to miss a couple of attacks there.
Right.
I don't know if we talked about Snake Island yet.
We touched on it during the week, but not on the radio show. So yeah, this week was a big turning point for both Snake Island and the tactical withdrawal from Severodonetsk. Yeah. Johnny, you don't know about Snake Island at this point?
No. Are there snakes?
Theoretically.
I think it's the shape of the island that is how it gets its name. But
right.
It's the island where at the very beginning of the war, the Ukrainians were positioned there, and a Russian warship rocked up and said,
surrender.
You better surrender. And I can't say what they said exactly in response on the radio, but they said, we're not going to surrender.
Right. In so many F-bombs. And that became a stamp that is sold now currently. They were also, the idea is that they were, the first story was that they were killed. They were actually captured. And then some of them, or if not all that were alive, were returned. They were released. That said, the Russians took Snake Island. They've been using it as a strategic point. They've been using it as a launch point. They've also been using it for aerial reconnaissance, drone launching, and all kinds of stuff. And apparently, the Ukrainians, I don't know if anybody knows this, have gotten some longer range munitions lately, and they put them to good use and drove the Russians off the island this week, reclaiming Snake Island.
And the Russians claimed that they were withdrawing because it was a show of good faith.
There's some good questions in the chat already. Is Snake Island where King Kong and Godzilla live?
No, that's Skull Island. Try to keep up. That's embarrassing. I saved those questions, by the way, for the Wyoming congressional runoff debate. That said, one of the things I would like to talk about is a couple of the statements from the Russians about both that and their continued issues about, because we've got Finland and Sweden getting the okay to join NATO.
Yep.
The European Union is fast tracking Ukraine as a member state.
Yep.
Every goal that Putin set up at the beginning of this is collapsing worse than if he had just left it alone. It would have taken a lot long. I mean, God knows if NATO, if Sweden and Finland would have ever joined NATO or felt they needed to without this. And the the ability for Ukraine to join EU was definitely in the cards, but a ways off. Now they're speeding up the entire process. Language-wise, and then of course they did it as a goodwill gesture. They gave back Snake Island.
Yeah. Oh, the Snake Island thing. Yeah. I would be cautious. I would caution a little bit of patience when it comes to joining the EU. They marched the European flag. The European Union flag is now inside the Ukrainian parliament, symbolically. So, but they have a lot of work to do here before they can join the European Union. The European Union learned its lesson with Greece, I think, in a lot of ways, during the Euro crisis. And you can't just let somebody whose economy is as problematic.
Has as many issues. Yes. Yeah, totally.
So it's not going to happen tomorrow. It is going to be fast tracked. That's good. That's good for the Ukrainians. Snake Island, the withdrawal. I think the withdrawal. One of the things that tickles me about the withdrawal of Snake Island is all of this. Oh, we didn't retreat from Snake Island because of Ukrainian artillery fire. We did it as a good faith thing. But then the day after they left Snake Island, they had to call in jets to blow up stuff that they left behind, indicating that they left in haste.
Yes.
So it kind of draws into question the whole concept of, we just withdrew because it was,
we don't really need you. You can have that. It's fine. And by the way, we still have the rights to the water around it, so that we can get the oil and gas out of there eventually if we want to. Yeah. So it's really, what it's really being seen as is a potential step towards eventually opening up some sort of corridor for shipping to come out of Odessa, because the harvest is currently. When I drove up from Odessa, I drove past many fields that were currently being the harvested, and so the harvest is in this year, but they have to get it to market, because if they don't get it to market, then they can't plant 2023's year of crops, and that's when we're going to potentially see a real stress on the food supply, world food supply. One way or the other, I suspect that much of the grain that is being harvested this year ultimately will find its way to market. Yeah.
But will it happen quickly enough for them to then plant the seeds for next year's harvest? And that's when we're going to know whether or not there's going to be a food crisis. Not this year, but in 2023 potentially.
Right. One of the ways we can handle that as well, and that it looks like they're working to handle that, is both Canada and the United States are increasing our grain output, and hopefully that will mitigate the number that is diminished if this, if there can be some stabilizing, of at least the farmland in the western part of the country over the next year, and it won't be as big a crisis as people are concerned it might be. That said, that's if the Russians don't decide, as as a sour grapes attack, to just pepper the fields with bombs just to stop food from going out, because they are arguing, like we talked about on the Solovyov and what's her name, the woman who from RT, saying starvation is the weapon we're going to use. That
Margarita Simonian. Yeah. Vile thing to say.
Yeah. So they're basically saying we need starvation is our best weapon. That'll be the thing that motivates the West to drop the sanctions and deal with us, because without us, these people will starve to death. And here's the problem they have. This is, I think, the issue they have. You could almost believe that there's a group, mostly Germans, and maybe some Rand Paul Americans, MTG types, that think if we just went back to the normal thing, the oil flows and the grain flows out of Russia would kind of stabilize economically and help get things back to normal relatively quickly, or would solve this problem. The problem is that there's no reason to trust that they will or can do that, because again, the sanctions against the oil refining and or the the oil extraction companies are going to stay in place regardless. Exxon and Chevron, all these countries are getting out. The Russians do not have the technology to export that oil on their own. They may the cut and barrels may be just a factor of incompetence more so than some sort of strategic chokery. And the same thing is true with farm stuff, because they don't have the technology for the advanced giant ag business that happens now. It requires a lot of computational and delivery issues that are gonna fall apart without cooperating with the West over the next couple of years. It is going that way. The world is going to have to adapt to a world without these resources over time, regardless, because Russia's not going to be able to do it on their own, and they can't be trusted to play in the sandbox.
Yeah, well, and in addition to that, the Russians have a vested interest in maintaining the food crisis, not only because they're hoping that it'll bring it'll either fracture the West or drag the West to a negotiating table, or force the West to put pressure on Ukraine to get to the negotiating table. But it's also because they're stealing it.
Yeah.
The Russians are stealing a lot of the food that they come across. They are so they know that it is a seller's market, as it were, because of this crisis that they themselves have created. So I'm just looking it up here, where there's a ship that's taking center stage in this.
Right. Yeah.
And it's in Turkey. Yeah, it's in Turkey. And vast quantities of Ukrainian grain stolen by territories now occupied by Moscow. And they're tracking, the Ukrainians are tracking this. And it pulled up into Karasu, this port in Turkey. And the Ukrainians have been saying, hey, you're dealing in stolen goods.
Right.
So they're trying to get that not to happen. But the Russians they see a financial benefit, not only a strategic benefit in this for them. So,
the interesting thing is that you're on the one hand, the Russians are engaged in, and this is extraordinary. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. On the one hand, the Russians are engaged in choking off foodstuffs to people that, they think they can manipulate, or that the West will care about, so that, if we starve those people, the West will stop the sanctions against us. They'll have to, otherwise those people will die. So they're willing to actively starve those people as a manipulation point, as an act of war to stop the Western sanctions. And at the same time, steal the grain that Ukraine would be sending to those people and give it to allied countries of their own as a manipulation point to keep them on the team. So that if India or any of these other countries, or even China, to keep them from absolutely coming out against Russia, that one of the manipulation points is that we can still supply you with grain. It's not our grain. We're stealing it. But if you're going to get it from anybody, you're going to get it from us. And so they're literally stealing this grain to starve those people as a manipulation point, and selling it to these people to manipulate them into supporting them in this circumstance. It is a double-edged starvation sword. And it's kind of amazing. Cynical. Yeah, we got to take a break. We'll be back right after this with more of Philip Ittner. If you go on YouTube, look up Philip Ittner, Philip, 1 L, and Ittner, Ittner. You can find his YouTube channel. And just look up Philip Ittner, Ukraine. That'll take you right to it. We'll be back right after this.